The day I discovered my husband's betrayal was the day that would change everything. Marcus had kept his secret mistress and their 2 children hidden from me with such skill, yet fate would have it that his deception would finally come to light. On that particular evening, which happened to be my birthday, I witnessed him in intimate embrace with his mistress, their passion unrestrained and shameless. The bitter irony was not lost on me. While I had been preparing for our anniversary celebration, he was celebrating in another woman's arms. He had always whispered sweet promises of his exclusive devotion, claiming I was the only one who held his heart. Yet as I stood there watching, his words felt like nothing more than cruel jest. My heart, which I had given so completely, felt tainted beyond redemption. I drew my cloak tighter around my shoulders and made my way back to our estate in silence. When spring arrived in all its glory, I gathered what rightfully belonged to me and departed our home with quiet dignity, leaving behind a life built on lies. The morning of my birthday had begun as countless others before it. Marcus graciously bid farewell to our guests after my celebration, then swept me into his arms with theatrical tenderness, dismissing the servants as he carried me to our chambers. "My dearest Catherine," he murmured, his voice rich with seeming affection, "you must be exhausted from the festivities." He knelt before me, removing my silk slippers with gentle hands before bringing a basin of warm water to bathe my feet. The heated water soothed my weary soles as his fingers worked with practiced care. "Did you enjoy your special day, my love?" His eyes gazed up at me with what appeared to be genuine adoration, the candlelight dancing across his handsome features. I looked down at him, considering his question for a long moment before offering a small nod. He dried my feet with a soft towel before lifting me tenderly onto our bed, his expression soft in the flickering light. "Happy birthday, my precious Catherine. May this new year bring you nothing but joy and contentment." His voice carried that familiar intimate tone as he pressed his nose gently against my cheek. "I'm afraid duty calls tonight, darling. Some urgent matters require my attention in the study, so I shall have to spend the night there. Tomorrow, I promise to make it up to you properly." I met his gaze, those dark eyes that seemed to hold entire constellations within them. He waited patiently for my response, never rushing me. "Must it be tonight? It is my birthday after all," I whispered. Marcus smiled with what seemed like genuine regret, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "You understand the demands of responsibility, don't you, my dear?" After a lengthy pause, I finally replied, "Take care of yourself. The nights grow cold. Don't catch your death." He tucked the covers around me with loving care and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead before reluctantly taking his leave. Once the house fell silent, I rose and dressed myself, then slipped into the inky darkness of the night. My husband had not gone to his study as claimed, but had instead made his way to a modest dwelling in a narrow lane not far from our estate. No servant stood guard at the entrance. Clearly, he had made prior arrangements for privacy. He entered without knocking, as comfortable as if it were his own home. I followed cautiously, keeping to the shadows. The small courtyard amplified every sound in the stillness of the night. "My lord," came a woman's sultry voice, "Pearl has missed you so terribly. Can you hear how my heart races for you?" Then I heard his familiar voice, thick with desire. "And are you being truthful about your longing?" "The children are sleeping peacefully," he inquired. "Yes, they're all tucked in. But my lord, today was your wife's birthday celebration. How could you bear to leave her for me?" The woman's voice dropped to a breathy whisper, followed by sounds that made my stomach turn. "You were being so provocative this morning," Marcus replied with heated passion. Even after bearing 2 children, you still refuse to wear proper undergarments. How could any man resist? Yet surely your mistress could satisfy such needs as well. Why do you come to me?" The sounds of their intimacy mixed with her gasps of pleasure as Marcus's lust-filled voice continued. "Catherine considers herself a refined lady of breeding. She lacks your bedroom talents that drive me to distraction." The escalating sounds of their encounter should have moved me to tears, yet I found myself strangely dry-eyed. The man who had sworn sacred vows of fidelity had long ago betrayed me, even fathering children with another woman. I felt no desire to burst in and catch them in their shameful act. The betrayal had already occurred. What good would tears and accusations do now? Even if he returned to me, the trust was irrevocably broken. One act of unfaithfulness renders all future promises meaningless. In my grip, I held a string of red coral beads that I had been clutching so tightly they suddenly snapped, scattering across the ground with tiny sounds like raindrops. Though the noise seemed deafening in the quiet night, the couple inside remained lost in their passionate encounter. I knelt and carefully gathered each precious bead, searching in the darkness until I was certain every one had been recovered. Only then did I allow myself to rise. The sounds from within suggested their passion was finally spent. "Where are you going?" the woman asked. "Catherine fears the dark. I must return to comfort her," came Marcus's reply as I heard the rustle of clothing being donned. "But what about me? I'm frightened too." "Pearl, Catherine is my wife. It's my duty to return to her. You are merely a mistress." "But the dowager lady initially preferred me, and she adores her grandchildren." "Even so, you could never compare to a single hair on Catherine's head." I hurried back through the darkness, my heart pounding. The return journey seemed impossibly brief, too short even for me to properly reflect on all the years Marcus and I had shared. What was the point now? I slipped back into bed just as Marcus quietly entered our chamber. He undressed and slid beneath the covers, enveloping me from behind as he whispered repeatedly in my ear, "Catherine, I love you so deeply." Whether from guilt or habit, he failed to notice that my body was ice cold, hardly the temperature of someone who had been sleeping peacefully for hours. The following morning, Marcus rose early to prepare a bowl of noodles for me personally. "My darling, let me make up for yesterday's oversight. I was so distracted by the celebrations that I forgot to prepare your traditional birthday longevity noodles." I remembered our first birthday together after our wedding, when he had insisted on making the noodles himself despite being a nobleman who had never set foot in a kitchen before. He had fumbled with pots and utensils, determined to master the task through sheer will. I could still picture his proud, loving expression as he presented that first steaming bowl, saying, "Catherine, hurry now. I made these with my own hands, so you'll have a year of good fortune." But I only managed a single bite before setting down my chopsticks. Somewhere along the way, the taste had changed completely. This year's batch held none of the original flavor I remembered. When I looked up, his face was filled with eager anticipation. "Is something wrong with the taste, darling? Let me prepare a fresh bowl." His distress seemed genuine enough, though I wondered how exhausting it must be to maintain such elaborate deceptions. "Are you upset about last night? Catherine, I was wrong. Next year on your birthday, I swear I won't leave your side for even a moment." He moved to embrace me, but I stepped away to the window, gazing at the flowering crabapple tree in our courtyard. "Please don't be angry with me," he pleaded, coming to stand beside me. "Today I'll stay by your side every second. Even if the Emperor himself summoned me, I would refuse. I'll spend the entire day with my precious Catherine." I turned to meet his eyes. Those dark depths appeared so clear and innocent, showing no trace of anxiety or guilt. He was masterful at concealing his true nature. I said nothing, continuing to stare at the vibrant blossoms swaying in the breeze. "Catherine, please don't ignore me." The morning breeze stirred the petals, making them tremble though none fell from their branches. A servant's urgent voice interrupted from outside. "Young master, there's an emergency!" Marcus's expression darkened with anger. "I'm not going anywhere! I told you, I'm staying with Catherine today!" He glanced at me anxiously, gauging my reaction. But the servant persisted, apparently facing a genuine crisis. "Sir, the dowager lady insists you come immediately. Your cousin's child has gone missing." Marcus stumbled slightly, and I finally spoke up. "You should go. A missing child is serious business." "No, the child. Others can search just as well." Yet his barely controlled anxiety betrayed his true feelings, his brows furrowed with worry as he fidgeted with his teacup. I grew tired of watching his internal struggle. "I'm feeling weary and wish to rest. Since you'd be of no use sitting here, and a child is a mother's most precious treasure, you really should go help." I realized that despite the sharp pain still piercing my heart, I had somehow learned to hide it completely. Perhaps that was progress of a sort. Marcus finally rose, rushing toward the door in his haste. "Very well, Catherine. Let me go see what can be done, and then I'll return to make it up to you properly." He didn't even finish his morning tea before hurrying away with the servant. What cousin's child? It was his mistress's child. His own child, in fact. The dowager lady was worried sick about her missing grandchild, so naturally Marcus was equally concerned. The room fell quiet except for the rustling of leaves and the cheerful chirping of magpies in the branches outside. Magpies sing to herald good fortune. Perhaps discovering the true nature of one's bedmate could indeed be considered a blessing. The previous year, Marcus had fallen gravely ill with a contagious disease. The physician warned that if he couldn't survive the crisis, death would surely follow. My mother-in-law was overcome with grief but kept herself and Pearl safely in the back courtyard, away from infection. The servants advised me to maintain my distance to avoid contagion. Instead, I resolutely entered his sick room and tended to him day and night. I personally fed him medicine and water, spoonful by spoonful, and bathed his fevered body countless times. When Marcus finally regained consciousness, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read before pulling me into his arms. "Catherine, I swear I will never fail you." After his recovery, I fell ill in turn. From that time forward, my constitution grew increasingly fragile, with frequent bouts of cold and fever. Marcus became even more solicitous toward me afterward. Due to my weakened state, our intimate relations became less frequent, and he was always gentle and considerate in bed. I attributed this to his concern for my health. Now I understood the truth. He was simply expending his energy elsewhere. I suddenly noticed that the ornaments usually hanging from his waist were absent. In the past, he had always worn numerous pouches and trinkets that I had sewn for him with my own hands. He used to tease me playfully. "Would my Catherine be willing to sew me a new sachet every year? I want to wear them all." Despite my poor needlework skills, I had learned to create beautiful sachets through countless pricked fingers and countless hours spent straining my eyes by dim candlelight. Over time, the strain seemed to affect my vision, causing my eyes to water frequently in the wind. At the time, I had considered it a labor of love and endured gladly. Now, remembering all those needle pricks made my hands tremble involuntarily. Where had all those sachets I had made gone? I preferred not to know, though I was certain they had met an unworthy end. I summoned a servant to quietly fetch Dr. Lawrence, who had been treating my health concerns under the pretense of a routine examination. After checking my pulse, Dr. Lawrence gave his usual assessment. My health was stable, though I remained childless after 3 years of marriage. I had desperately wanted to bear Marcus a child, drinking bitter herbal remedies daily for years without success. All those fertility treatments I had endured for 3 long years could finally be discontinued. I was immensely grateful that we had never had children together. Dr. Lawrence, please prepare a different prescription for me. Instead of fertility herbs, I need something to strengthen my blood and vital energy. I placed a substantial stack of banknotes on the table as payment. Dr. Lawrence seemed momentarily stunned, but didn't take the money, simply nodding. Indeed, my lady, strengthening your constitution would be beneficial. As he prepared to leave with his medicine chest, he noticed the red coral ornament on my table. His expression changed dramatically. My lady, how long has this coral been in this room? Nearly 3 years now. Dr. Lawrence had always examined me in the front hall before, so he had never seen it. The coral had been Marcus's wedding gift to me. Catherine, coral is precious and will protect my dear wife's health, he had said when he presented it. Dr. Lawrence leaned closer to examine it carefully, then recoiled in shock. He lowered his voice urgently. My lady, this isn't red coral at all. It's been soaked in musk oil. Daily exposure to musk makes pregnancy impossible. The effects aren't immediately obvious, but over time, conception becomes impossible. What calculating cruelty! My heart felt as though it were being pierced by needles. So this was the truth. This was how it had been all along. Marcus truly was a masterful deceiver. Is it still possible for me to conceive? Dr. Lawrence stroked his gray beard and sighed heavily. My heart sank, but then he continued, Your ladyship has always enjoyed robust health. With careful treatment, pregnancy should still be possible. Relief flooded through me. Then I place myself in your capable hands, but please understand. I am aware of the household situation, my lady. After the doctor departed, I felt as though the strength that had been holding me together suddenly evaporated. I collapsed onto the bed, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Everything had been false. Not a trace of genuine feeling remained. Yet Marcus's cruelty exceeded even my worst imaginings. As the sun slowly set, casting the last rays of light behind the clouds, darkness settled over the room. I made my way toward the Dowager Lady's quarters. Before I could enter, I heard cheerful laughter from within. Oh, you little rascal! Don't you ever frighten us like that again! Look how worried your mother and father were! We promise, grandmother! My dear, don't spoil them so much. These 2 children are becoming quite pampered. How can I help but dote on them? They're my precious grandchildren! Then came a sharp warning. Keep your voices down. Catherine must never hear about this. If there are any more incidents like this, Pearl, I'll stop visiting you entirely. But the Dowager Lady initially favored me, and she clearly adores her grandchildren. Even so, you're not worth a single hair on Catherine's head. Standing outside, I felt like an unwelcome stranger, completely disconnected from this cozy family scene. Oh my lady, why didn't you send word that you were coming? A servant noticed me at the entrance, and the conversation inside immediately ceased. Marcus hurried out, flustered. Catherine, you... I looked at his panicked expression and managed a smile. I just arrived. I was about to enter when your mother's maid called me back. Marcus seemed to exhale in relief. Come inside quickly. The evening air has grown chill. You might catch cold. He pulled me close, instructing a servant. Fetch a cloak for my lady. The Dowager Lady's face brightened with a welcoming smile. Catherine, dear, Marcus is right about the evening air. You must take care of your health on these walks. I'm still hoping you'll recover your strength soon and bless our family with children. The Dowager Lady beamed with apparent affection, though Pearl beside her had gone noticeably pale. Husband, has cousin's child been found safely? Pearl managed a gracious smile. Yes, sister-in-law. The child wandered off this morning, and we searched everywhere before cousin found them. I caught a flash of smugness in her eyes as she spoke. That's wonderful news. You must take good care of your cousin, husband. After all, she's a widow with children seeking our family's protection. Any negligence on our part would invite gossip. Marcus squeezed my hand and drew me closer, though his touch now made my skin crawl. Catherine, let's go now that we know the child is safe. I want to spend time with you. Everyone present seemed to harbor secret motives and hidden agendas. 3 years earlier, Pearl had arrived in the capital claiming her husband was away on business. The dowager lady had arranged lodging for her in a courtyard adjacent to our estate. I never suspected that Marcus would become intimately involved with her, eventually fathering 2 children. Marcus carefully escorted me back to our quarters, his attention seemingly focused entirely on me, as if I were the only person in his world. Throughout our 3-year marriage, he had always treated me as his foremost priority, making it seem as though I remained the center of his universe. My hands grew colder while his remained fever-warm, like burning coals that could never warm me through. How was he able to maintain such elaborate pretenses with such skill? On our moonlit walk home, he held my hand tightly. Catherine, as long as I'm with you, I'll always hold your hand and never let go. The path was difficult to navigate in darkness, though eventually I would have to walk it alone. You've had an exhausting day. Rest early tonight. I'll return to be with you as soon as I finish some business matters. Sweet dreams, my dear. Once again, Marcus hurried off to the neighboring courtyard. Pearl's gentle persuasion quickly lured him into bed, and amidst their heavy breathing, Marcus's voice grew hoarse with passion. Pearl, don't provoke Catherine. If you obey me, I'll visit you every night for our pleasure. You're different from Catherine. She's my wife, the woman I love most, while you're merely my diversion. I understand, my lord, but what if your Catherine discovers our secret? She never will. His confidence was absolute. The sounds from within gradually subsided, and I decided to make my presence known by knocking at the door. Chaos erupted inside before Pearl finally opened the door, draped in a thin robe and smiling with obvious satisfaction. Sister-in-law, it's quite late. What brings you here? I lifted the food container I carried. The child had such a fright today. I came to check on them. Won't you invite me in? Pearl swayed her hips seductively as she welcomed me inside. The moment the door opened, an unmistakable scent filled the air. Pearl's face glowed with triumph. Please forgive the atmosphere, sister-in-law. My husband returned today after a long absence, and we were reuniting intimately. I discreetly covered my nose with a handkerchief. I understand completely. The affection between you and cousin is truly enviable. Pearl, I quite envy such devotion. I deflected further discussion. You seem so content, Pearl. Your relationship with your husband must be deeply fulfilling. Pearl blushed coyly, allowing her robe to slip and reveal the passionate marks on her neck. Sister-in-law, such talk is embarrassing. My husband and I do share profound intimacy. In bed, he's wonderfully demanding. It's absolutely transcendent. The sound of breaking porcelain came from behind the screen. Pearl smiled at me. That must be my husband. He probably fell asleep drinking tea. Through the screen's shadow, I found the situation almost amusing. All those years of tender devotion had been utterly wasted. I remembered Marcus once playfully saying, Catherine, look, I'm tying you up so you can never leave me. Marcus, you're messing up my hair. Don't cry, Catherine. Let me fix your hair properly. There, all better. Catherine, I swear you're the only woman I'll ever love. If I break this vow, may I die a terrible death. Pearl's voice brought me back to reality. I just hope my husband can bring me to live with him soon, so our family can finally be united. As she spoke, Pearl glanced meaningfully toward the screen where Marcus was hiding. His acting skills had fooled me completely for years. Now I realized I wasn't his only victim. He had been manipulating everyone around him with equal skill. When such disgusting and cruel truths are stripped bare, it naturally takes time to process the emotional devastation. What had been real in our relationship? The passionate whispers during intimate moments? False. The daily displays of loving devotion? False. Marcus had been rotten to the core for far longer than I had realized. Now I understood why he hadn't been intimate with me for over a month. I had attributed it to his consideration for my delicate health, but he had simply been satisfying himself elsewhere. I rose to leave. It's getting late. I should go. As I reached the door, I paused and turned back to Pearl and to Marcus hiding behind the screen. I hope you get your heart's desire soon, Pearl. May your family enjoy perfect harmony together. More breaking sounds came from behind the screen. I laughed softly. You'd better check on that. It sounds like another vase has shattered. That night, Marcus didn't return home. He sent word through a servant that urgent business detained him, along with an exquisite crabapple blossom hairpin as a gift. I didn't touch the gift, instead instructing the servant to prepare a carriage. I needed to make a journey. The carriage carried me through swaying motion to a estate outside the city, where I found a woman sorting medicinal herbs in the courtyard. She was dressed simply, methodically categorizing and drying her supplies in the afternoon sun. I called out joyfully, "Miriam!" The woman looked up, meeting my gaze. "Catherine!" She dropped her herbs and ran to embrace me tightly. "You impossible girl. You marry a man and forget all about your dearest friend. What brings you to visit me today?" Miriam was my closest companion. Like me, she had lost both parents and we had supported each other through those dark times. She had learned the healing arts from a renowned physician while I had married Marcus. She remained as vibrant as ever, while I seemed to have lost my vitality. "Miriam, do you still dream of traveling to practice medicine throughout the land?" My direct question made her eyes light up immediately. "Of course I do. I always hoped we could journey together, but after you married, I abandoned that dream." I watched her carefully arranged herbs drying in the courtyard and made my decision. "If I said I wanted to accompany you, would you still have me?" Miriam looked surprised, but quickly understood everything. "Catherine, Marcus has treated you badly. He's betrayed you." From the moment I discovered Marcus's betrayal until facing these vile people, I hadn't shed a single tear. But looking into Miriam's eyes, I could no longer contain myself and collapsed against her shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably. Miriam held me tightly. "Catherine, we don't want contaminated men. Come, let's leave this place." Marcus still hadn't returned home. A servant reported that his business remained urgent and he had sent another gift, a jade safety amulet, through the messenger. I had the maid packet with the crabapple hairpin in a box, along with all his previous gifts, locking them away together. I spent the entire day in our room, retrieving a large chest I had kept secured with a lock. Inside were numerous letters of various sizes, love letters Marcus had written me over the years. From initially restrained expressions to increasingly passionate declarations, they spanned 2 full years before our marriage, when I was a quietly refined young lady and he was the son of a government minister. Our first meeting had been on a day of heavy snowfall. The world was blanketed in silver while bitter wind cut through the air. While everyone else huddled indoors for warmth, I had ventured onto the deserted streets. Walking through the falling snow always made me feel my mother's presence nearby. She had loved watching snow more than anything. Lost in reverie, I slipped and fell into an icy pond. The world was white in every direction, and I couldn't find anyone to rescue me. In my desperation, a young man leaped down from a wall and extended a branch toward me. "Grab hold, I'll pull you out." That youth's sincere heart and youthful courage saved my life. Grateful for his rescue, I fell in love with him at first sight. A deep, devoted love. Now I was personally feeding those letters into the fire, destroying them one by one with my own hands. Marcus hadn't returned to the estate for several days, prompting even the dowager lady to send inquiries about his whereabouts. A servant brought back his latest message. "Catherine, my duties truly prevent my return. Please be patient a little longer. Once I complete these urgent matters, I'll come home immediately. Catherine, I love you." Sitting before the flowering crabapple tree, I began composing my own letter. The gentle breeze offered no words, but somehow reached into my heart. Writing the characters for divorce felt surprisingly simple. The spring breeze carried the sweet fragrance of the crabapple blossoms as I placed the divorce papers neatly in my jewelry box, along with the hairpin and jade amulet he had sent during his absence. After that day, the small courtyard near our estate stood empty. Marcus had undoubtedly moved Pearl and her children to another location. He remained as cautiously thorough as ever. The passionate young man who had once prostrated himself in prayer for my safety had finally been swept away by time's river. His former sincerity had been genuine, but so had his betrayal with another woman and their children. Perhaps he harbored hopes that his ignorance would allow us to remain a loving couple forever. But heaven apparently couldn't tolerate such deception, and finally granted me the clarity to extricate myself from this relationship. How fortunate that I could still find redemption. On the day I prepared to leave, I quietly converted all my dowry possessions into banknotes. The crabapple blossoms in our courtyard continued blooming with passionate intensity. I dined quietly as usual, and the afternoon sunlight was particularly beautiful. When a servant prepared my carriage, he bowed respectfully. "My lady, shall we visit Dr. Lawrence outside the city again today?" I didn't answer directly, but smiled and dismissed him. "Today I'll walk alone. The sunlight is too beautiful to waste indoors." He seemed hesitant. "If the young master returns and doesn't find you, he might worry." I looked toward the brilliant sun and cracked the whip. "No, he won't." The carriage slowly departed our estate. "Farewell, Marcus." Suddenly, Marcus felt a constriction in his chest, sensing that something deeply troubling had occurred. For the first time, the letter he had sent received no reply. Pearl embraced him from behind. "My lord, you've spent these past days with little Timothy and Hope. They're so happy. If only you could always be with them." Marcus felt increasingly agitated. Ever since the night Catherine had nearly discovered him at Pearl's residence, he had immediately relocated Pearl to another location. The memory still filled him with dread. He had thought that keeping distance from Catherine would prevent her from learning the truth. He had intended to return to Catherine the very next day, but Timothy had developed a high fever. Pearl, helpless as a woman alone, had pleaded tearfully for him to stay, so he had agreed to remain a few days. It seemed wise, time to compose himself and avoid arousing Catherine's suspicions. Yet today, an oppressive weight seemed to press against his chest, making him anxious. He pushed away Pearl's advances and strode toward the door. "The child has recovered. I must return home. My wife is waiting for me." Yes, he had a wife. He was Catherine's husband, and she was waiting at home for his return. During his absence, he wondered if she had been eating properly. Anticipating his reunion with Catherine filled him with joy. A servant brought his horse as he took long strides toward home. "Where is my lady? Has she dined properly?" The servant stammered hesitantly. "My lady isn't at the estate." Marcus's expression immediately grew cold. "She's gone out? Where?" His face darkened with anger. "She said she wanted to stroll around but didn't specify where." She left early this morning and should have returned by now. Usually my lady goes out early and returns by this time." Marcus's eyes flashed with fury. "You don't know where she went? If anything has happened to her, I'll have your head." The servant fell to his knees. "Master, please forgive me. My lady seemed in good spirits. She wouldn't let me accompany her, and she is our mistress." Marcus rushed toward Catherine's courtyard. Everything appeared unchanged from before. Even the crabapple branch extending through the window remained in the same position, swaying gently in the breeze. Sunlight filtered through the blossoms, making Marcus's eyes sting with tears. Nothing had changed, yet the red coral ornament had vanished from the table. Her dressing table was arranged with perfect order. Still, Marcus sensed with growing dread that something terrible had occurred. Marcus continued waiting hopefully, imagining that Catherine would soon walk gracefully toward him and throw herself into his arms, pouting playfully. "So you finally remembered to come home. I missed you terribly. Husband, hold me close." This was his fantasy, yet his hands trembled uncontrollably, refusing to stop. He was still deceiving himself, afraid to consider that his intuitive Catherine might have discovered everything, but the thought inevitably led him to remember Catherine's decisive nature. Before their marriage, his mother had arranged for him to take a concubine, a woman who wept pitifully and begged him to provide shelter, promising she harbored no improper ambitions. He had kept her as a mere servant, thinking a simple maid posed no threat, but Catherine had seen through the arrangement immediately. She refused to speak to him for an entire month, no matter how he tried to win her back. During that time, he felt as though he had lost his soul, though he hadn't understood the gravity of the situation. After dismissing the servant, he had risen before dawn for half a year to buy Catherine rare rose pastries from across the city. Only after 6 months of such devotion would she speak to him again. He had sworn then that she would be his only love for life, or else heaven should strike him down with lightning and grant him a terrible death. He jolted back to awareness and realized the sun had already set, painting the sky with sunset hues. Catherine still hadn't returned. He leaped up and urgently summoned a servant. "My lady still isn't back. Has she been visiting anywhere recently?" The servant thought carefully before responding. "The estate outside the city. Dr. Miriam's place." Miriam Lawrence, Catherine's dearest friend from childhood. She would surely know Catherine's whereabouts. Since Catherine had lost both parents and had few connections remaining in the capital, Miriam was likely her closest confidant. Marcus felt increasingly confident in his assessment. He refused to believe Catherine had discovered his relationship with Pearl. She had probably just gone to visit Miriam and they had lost track of time while talking. That had to be it. Besides, where could she possibly go if she left him? She had no family, and no other household in the capital would treat her with the singular devotion he had shown. She was already the envy of every woman in the capital. Yet his heart continued racing with anxiety, leaving him completely unsettled. He whipped his horse mercilessly, desperate to reach the outskirts as quickly as possible. Though a servant had prepared a carriage, he insisted on riding to save time. He managed to leave the city just before the gates closed and finally reached Miriam's small courtyard. But the dark, lifeless building filled him with panic. With trembling hands, he opened the courtyard gate to find no light anywhere within. A servant arriving behind him lit a candle, finally illuminating the interior. Everything was neat and orderly, but completely empty. Overwhelming terror engulfed him. In his daze, he heard a woman's voice calling from outside. "Who are you people? This is Dr. Miriam's home." Marcus stumbled toward the woman frantically. "Madam, please, do you know where Dr. Miriam has gone?" The woman held up her candle to examine Marcus's face. Oh, Dr. Miriam left the capital early this morning with a girl as beautiful as a fairy. Where did they go? Marcus's voice rose several pitches in desperation. The woman regarded him with suspicion. Who are you, and why are you asking about Dr. Miriam? Marcus forced himself to speak more calmly. I am the husband of that beautiful girl. I can't find my wife, and I hope you can provide any information you might have. The woman's expression softened. Ah, I see. As for where they went, I'm not certain. I only know Dr. Miriam travels everywhere practicing medicine, and that girl has apparently joined her. The world is vast and wide. She won't be easy to find. Marcus couldn't absorb any more of her words. His ears rang with Catherine's voice calling his name, until finally it seemed like she was saying, Marcus, goodbye forever. He had lost his wife. Marcus stumbled back to the estate without alerting his mother, sitting alone in the room he had shared with Catherine. When a maid heard sounds from within and knocked on the door, Marcus leaped up to answer, hoping desperately it might be Catherine. Instead, he found Catherine's personal maid standing there. Young master, my lady said you would find the answers you seek in her jewelry box. Marcus's eyes misted over as he rushed to the dressing table and pulled open the drawer. By the pale moonlight streaming through the window and the flickering candlelight within the room, he immediately saw a letter. Above the letter lay the crabapple hairpin and jade amulet he had recently sent her. He seemed to realize what was happening, but refused to accept it, repeatedly caressing the gleaming crabapple hairpin. After a long moment, he finally opened the letter. Today was the 16th day of the month, and the moonlight was exceptionally bright. By its clear radiance, he could finally make out the letter's contents. Divorce papers. We part ways amicably, each to find our own happiness. The thin paper felt heavy as 1,000 pounds in his hands, almost too much to bear. Beneath the envelope was another letter. When he opened it, a lover's knot fell out. His breathing became labored. This was the knot Pearl had given him, which he had searched for everywhere without success. Catherine had seen everything. She knew the complete truth. So that night when she visited Pearl, she had been fully aware of the situation. His scalp prickled with dread, yet he carefully replaced each item before venturing into the moonlit night. He went directly to Pearl's current residence. Despite the late hour, Pearl was still awake, her makeup perfectly applied as though expecting someone. Without speaking, he allowed Pearl to throw herself into his arms, then pushed her onto the bed and tore her gossamer thin garments before pressing himself upon her. Pearl was delighted, wrapping her arms around his neck and drawing him closer, but in the next instant, Marcus's hands closed around her throat. As she struggled desperately, his grip only tightened. Only when he heard children's innocent voices from behind the door did he release her. Pearl gasped for breath. Timothy, Hope, everything's fine. It's just Father. Go back to sleep now. Once the children had returned to their room, Pearl stared at Marcus in terror. Why, my lord? Marcus pressed down on her again, kicking her hard onto the bed. You know exactly why. Pearl clutched her chest where he had struck her, tears streaming down her face. My lord, I truly don't understand what I've done wrong. Why are you treating me so harshly? Marcus showed no sympathy, pointing at the torn robe on the floor with a cold laugh. Weren't you already prepared for my visit tonight, hoping to seduce me? Pearl caressed her belly with a tender expression. My lord, I simply have joyful news to share. I'm with child. Marcus showed no happiness whatsoever, responding coldly. Get rid of it. There are already 2 children who shouldn't have been born. Why add another? Pearl's face went white. She protected her abdomen with one hand while crawling toward Marcus on her knees, grasping at his robes. My lord, this is your child. Feel here. Please let me bear this child. I'd be willing to give it to your wife to raise." At the mention of Catherine, Marcus grabbed Pearl's throat again, his hands revealing prominent veins as she clawed desperately at his waist. "How dare you! How dare you flaunt yourself before Catherine? You're not worthy to shine Catherine's shoes! And you want to give your child to Catherine? Your calculating schemes are truly audacious. You're nothing but a woman who crawls into men's beds. How dare you aspire to anything more?" Pearl seemed to recognize the terrifying nature of the man before her. She knelt on the ground, repeatedly kowtowing. "My lord, I was wrong. I'll never dare again. But the physician says if I don't carry this child to term, I'll never be able to have children again. Please, my lord, let me give birth." Marcus's expression darkened further. He crouched down and smiled at Pearl. "Very well." Pearl seemed to grasp at salvation, but in the next moment, Marcus kicked her violently in the stomach. Instantly, excruciating pain struck, and Pearl couldn't even cry out, only curling up on the ground. "Now there won't be any more complications." Marcus didn't even glance at the blood gradually pooling beneath her. "Aren't you satisfied enough? I've given you money, provided you with housing, allowed you free access to our estate. Why couldn't you remain quietly in your place as a hidden mistress?" Pearl finally saw this man's true nature clearly. Anyone willing to betray his wife was hardly a good person. Yes, she had made mistakes. Her husband was a profit-obsessed merchant who never treated her kindly and was brutal toward her in bed. She had escaped and sought refuge with her aunt. That day, amid a garden of distracting flowers, she had instantly been captivated by the newly married Marcus, not for any reason other than how wonderfully he treated his wife Catherine. She had thought, "I must possess such a man." That very night, she had taken drugged tea to his study. When he awoke the next morning, Marcus had nearly ended her life. But she had gambled and won. What man could resist physical temptation? After compromising her body, she could make any demands of him. Later, he had even allowed her to bear his children. Yet he continued showering Catherine with love and affection. Fortunately, he was genuinely obsessed with her body. And even the dowager lady, her aunt, doted on her and the children. This had given her inappropriate aspirations. Now she was reaping what she had sown. Her abdomen throbbed with pain, but this was entirely her own fault. However, she still had her children. She had to survive for them. "My lord, please save me. Timothy and Hope can't lose their mother." Marcus's expression softened slightly, and he finally raised his hand. A servant quickly entered. "As long as she doesn't die, that's sufficient." Then he left without a trace of compassion. Catherine was still nowhere to be found, yet he already felt trapped in a frozen wasteland that chilled his very soul. He clutched the jade amulet she had refused to accept, warm and smooth, yet it seemed to strip away layers of his heart. Everything was becoming clear. That night at Pearl's residence, Catherine could easily have walked behind the screen to confirm his presence, but she hadn't. Instead, she had wished him and Pearl lasting happiness. Did she truly not want him anymore? Marcus dared not contemplate this possibility. Miriam and I rode our carriage southward, journeying through regions of simple, honest folk. The experience was infinitely better than being confined to inner chambers day after day. Initially, Miriam worried I might sink into despair and tried various ways to make me laugh, but from the day I left the capital, I had already resolved my inner turmoil. Rotten fruit should be discarded immediately. Eating it would only cause illness. The same applies to people. Our journey was full of interest. Wherever we went, among the simple country folk, Miriam would diagnose and treat patients while I assisted her. We worked together with perfect understanding, just like before. Though our life was wandering and uncertain, we found it deeply satisfying. The only blight on our travels was Marcus. He had discovered my departure and sent people to track us throughout our journey. Streets were filled with people carrying portraits, examining every young woman they encountered with suspicious scrutiny. Miriam cursed vehemently. That Marcus is absolutely worthless. What's the point of all this now? Does he think he can undo everything? If he'd known this day would come, why did he act so shamefully in the first place? Disgusting wretch! Miriam's face flushed red with indignation. I handed her a sweet osmanthus cake made by a grateful patient's wife. Here, eat this first. It's your favorite osmanthus cake. Miriam accepted it and spoke with heartfelt concern. Catherine, you must reach a final resolution with him. What are you thinking? I looked up to meet Miriam's worried gaze and patted her hand. Silly Miriam, of course I must return to settle things with him. This journey has simply been my way of experiencing freedom and contentment in advance. I still need to retrieve my divorce papers. But what if Marcus refuses? If he becomes desperate, it could be quite troublesome. I bit into the osmanthus cake, sweetly delicious, warming my heart. He might refuse, but what about his mother? She surely won't watch her son lose his mind indefinitely. Besides, if outsiders learned about those two children, what respectable young lady would marry into such a situation? Marcus's mother isn't blind to social realities. Miriam nodded in agreement, then suddenly burst into tears and embraced me tightly. Thank goodness! You're still the Catherine I've always known. Being held by Miriam at that moment seemed to dissolve all the grievances and pain I had endured during this period. My nose stung with tears as I patted her back. Get up quickly! You're getting osmanthus cake crumbs from your mouth all over my clothes. I still had Miriam. The future would be bright indeed. After Miriam treated her final patient, a guard-like figure entered our temporary clinic. I immediately recognized him as one of Marcus's men sent to find me. The man knelt and bowed respectfully. My lady, we've finally found you. The young master has nearly torn the capital apart, searching. My expression remained coldly indifferent. I will return of my own accord, but if there's any further harassment, I absolutely will not come back. The man hesitated briefly before making his decision. Yes, my lady. Miriam and I continued our journey, providing medical care while leisurely making our way back to the capital. Marcus's subordinate had sent word ahead, following at a discreet distance behind us. As soon as we entered the capital gates, we encountered Marcus. He appeared utterly exhausted, lacking any trace of his former spirited demeanor. He quickly approached, wanting to drape a cloak around my shoulders. I raised my hand and stepped back. He froze, his eyes filled with shock. He lowered his hands, passing the cloak to a servant behind him, forcing a placating smile. Catherine, where have you been? I missed you terribly. His eyes were red-rimmed. In the past, seeing such distress would have immediately softened my heart. Now, looking at his current state only annoyed me. Don't you already know everything? Hurry up. Have you signed the divorce papers? I'm pressed for time. His eyes seemed to shake with turbulent emotions. When he tried to take my hand, Miriam quickly pricked him with a needle before I could react. His hand instantly lost strength and dropped limply. You shameless wretch, who are you putting on this performance for? Go act for your mistress and children. No one here cares about your theatrics. Miriam's fury attracted immediate attention from passers-by. Apparently, affairs involving mistresses were the most compelling gossip for common people to discuss. Aren't these two the legendary perfect couple from the capital, young Master Marcus and his wife? Look at Master Marcus's haggard appearance. Something serious must have happened. It seems he kept a mistress? I didn't want to become embroiled in public speculation, so I spoke calmly. You should have realized when you committed those acts that this day would come. I've taken only my rightful dowry and haven't touched a single thing belonging to your family. Deliver the divorce papers tomorrow. I don't want any other entanglements or waste more time." With that, I turned to leave with Miriam for the countryside estate. Marcus tried to reach for me but lacked the strength, so he hurried to follow instead. "Catherine, won't you return home to pack your belongings? Those keepsakes from our courtship. You haven't taken them. You must have forgotten." I stopped and turned back with a mocking laugh. "I don't want those pieces of trash. Since I'm divorcing you, why would I take along things that would disgust me? And if you take one more step following me, I'll leave permanently. Let's see who can outlast the other." With each word I spoke, Marcus seemed to shrink further, resembling an ancient, withered old man standing there pitifully. But what concern was that of mine? Marcus didn't follow further, at least he showed that much sense. The next day there was knocking at our courtyard gate. I assumed Marcus had come to deliver the divorce papers and opened the door, eager to end this unfortunate relationship quickly. Instead of Marcus, I found the dowager lady in elaborate dress, her face twisted with malice. Gone was any trace of her former kind demeanor. She struck her walking stick violently against the ground. "You wretched creature! My son merely kept a mistress behind your back, and you're so heartless as to destroy him completely? If anything happens to my son and precious grandchildren, I'll make you wish for death." I had always assumed they were simply hiding things from me, never imagining their true faces were so ugly. Pain never feels real until the whip strikes your own back. The dowager lady had concealed her true nature well. I thought I'd never see this side of her again. I had always known she disliked me. Her son was a wealthy young master while I had become an orphan without parents. How could I be worthy of her precious boy? When Marcus had insisted on marrying me, he had been quite resolute. He had sworn before the dowager lady that he would marry none but me, or else he would become a monk. He had even fasted for several days until the dowager lady finally relented. I had glimpsed this mask once before, but hadn't seen it since our marriage. Now it seemed she could no longer contain herself. "If you want to leave, then leave, but why must you bewitch my son so that he refuses to divorce you? What are your intentions?" Her gaze seemed ready to flay me alive. I stepped back and splashed the dirty water from my basin at her feet, sending muddy drops scattering across her skirt hem. "What terrible luck so early in the morning! Hurry up and have Marcus deliver the divorce papers so you can welcome your dear niece into the family. Otherwise, your niece's belly will start showing again." The dowager lady raised her walking stick to strike me, but it never landed. "Mother!" It was Marcus. He stepped behind me to block the descending cane, which struck him with a solid thud. Clearly, she had put real force behind it. "My son!" The dowager lady anxiously examined Marcus's injuries, but he pushed her away. "Spare me your false concern." The dowager lady looked wounded and incredulous. "How can you speak to your mother this way? She's been childless for years, and you merely kept a mistress, yet she creates such a scene. Where are the manners of a proper lady?" Marcus appeared utterly exhausted and bitterly disappointed. He suddenly began laughing, his face showing signs of breakdown. "Catherine's years of childlessness were all your doing, weren't they? That red coral ornament was something you had specially purchased. I thought you meant well for Catherine, but you were so vicious." The dowager lady remained defiant. "Marcus, how dare you speak to your own mother this way? You claim to love Catherine deeply, yet you've been having children with another woman all along." The first time might have been Pearl's scheme, but what about all the subsequent times? Weren't you perfectly willing? Now that everything's exposed, you blame me for harming her? "Marcus, I simply dislike her and refuse to let her bear children for our family. Compared to me, you're the truly hypocritical one." I watched these people tear each other apart with complete indifference. I had known long ago who was responsible for the musk in the red coral, and I had prepared an appropriate gift in return. But I found this bickering tediously time-consuming. I extended my hand toward Marcus, demanding, "Hand it over. I don't have time to watch you handle family business." The dowager lady collapsed on the ground, tears streaming uncontrollably. Miriam emerged from inside with a broom, making sweeping motions toward the door. "Black-hearted, rotten creatures defiling our courtyard first thing in the morning." Marcus looked utterly dejected, lacking any trace of his former vitality. After sending his mother away, he drew a crumpled paper from his robes. His hand trembled as he extended it toward me. "Catherine." His eyes had lost all their spark, like an aged wanderer in an endless desert. I immediately snatched the paper, fearing he might change his mind and tear it up. Seeing his signature already inscribed brought me profound relief. Finally, everything was settled. Marcus's hand froze mid-air before he managed a bitter smile. "Catherine, do you despise me so completely? But now that I've given you the divorce papers, I want to court you again." A glimmer appeared in his eyes. I laughed coldly. "Do you think I'd jump into the same pit twice? Marcus, where do you find such audacity?" His shamelessness was truly breathtaking. "Catherine, in my heart, you're still the only one." I couldn't help but laugh out loud, pointing behind him. "There are your true wife and children. Go to them quickly." Marcus's eyes filled with panic as he turned around. The breeze stirred, scattering falling leaves. Pearl stood there holding both children by the hand, her eyes filled with fear, having lost all her former arrogance. Marcus dropped to his knees. In that moment, the young man who had once looked at me with complete devotion finally departed forever. In a trance, I could see that youth, tall and handsome, smiling broadly, yet speaking with determination. "Catherine, don't forgive him. Never forgive anyone who hurts you, even if it's me." The youth dispersed in the wind while Marcus before me wept bitterly. "Catherine, I always considered myself a refined lady, naturally lacking the bedroom skills that drive you to distraction." Thunder crashed as the last hope in Marcus's eyes shattered completely. "Catherine, but you took the embroidered sachet from our wedding night, didn't you? With those intertwined strands of our hair, we're still bound as husband and wife." Like a desert traveler spotting an oasis, he seemed overjoyed. But it was merely a mirage, ultimately empty illusion. Miriam apparently couldn't bear his persistence and spoke with cold mockery. "You mean the sachet embroidered with mandarin ducks? Catherine burned it long ago. Such an inauspicious object is better destroyed and forgotten." "Catherine, let's go. We have the divorce papers now. Once we complete the official procedures, you'll be free." Why waste words on him? Miriam was absolutely right. "Let's go immediately." I pulled Miriam along cheerfully toward the government office, then remembered something. I turned back to instruct Marcus. "Take your family of 4 and leave quickly. Don't contaminate the medicinal herbs Miriam and I are drying. Your presence might affect their potency due to the bad luck." Emerging from the government office, I felt completely refreshed. I would treat all past unpleasantness as valuable lessons learned. Sincerity is the most worthless thing in this world. Marcus didn't come looking for me again, which gave me peace of mind. But unexpectedly, just before I left the capital, Pearl sought me out. Her face bore signs of injury, though she had tried to conceal them with powder and rouge. "Catherine, I won. In the end, I'm the one who shared Marcus's bed most often these past years. You have no idea how much he adores me in bed." Her face glowed with triumph as she caressed her slightly swollen belly. "This is my 3rd child with Marcus. Now our family can finally be united." I felt like I hadn't consulted the almanac this morning. Such terrible luck so early in the day. I went inside to fetch salt from the kitchen and scattered it liberally over Pearl, causing her to shriek, "Catherine, what are you doing?" As I continued throwing salt, I replied, "Getting rid of bad luck, naturally. Congratulations on treasuring garbage as if it were gold. You two absolutely must stay together forever to avoid harming other innocent people." I found her mentally ill, beaten so severely, yet still so devoted to Marcus. Truly, it must be love. Before departing, Miriam scattered a circle of salt around our courtyard gate. "Away with bad luck. Welcome to new life." Pearl stormed off angrily but turned back to see Marcus approaching in a fury. "Pearl, why did you seek out Catherine?" Like a chameleon, she immediately changed. "My lord, I was wrong. Please don't hurt me." I ignored them completely, simply taking more salt from Miriam to sprinkle around myself. Marcus's face went deathly pale while Miriam and I departed in high spirits. Miriam and I embarked once again on our southern journey. With good people and beautiful scenery, life was wonderfully fulfilling. The most beautiful thing in life is pursuing what you love. Miriam healed and saved lives while I supported and assisted her. This was indeed life's greatest joy. Having such a close friend was truly one of life's great blessings. As for Marcus, 2 years later, when Miriam and I returned from another southern expedition, Miriam gathered news from around town and shared it all with me. The former young master of the estate now spent his days drowning in alcohol and debauchery. He hadn't remarried, though everyone knew about his illegitimate children. Their unwed relationship and clandestine affair were public knowledge, yet Pearl seemed unbothered, continuing to stay by his side with the same gentle devotion, enduring his anger and dissatisfaction without complaint. Before I left the capital, Pearl had been pregnant, but that child was ultimately never born. According to a local candy vendor, such tragedy. Young Master Marcus's mistress gave birth to a stillborn child. What terrible karma. He couldn't marry into any respectable family. No one wanted to enter such a den of wolves. The dowager lady's health had deteriorated since 2 years ago, and she now lay bedridden, surviving only on medicinal treatments. Her existence was likely worse than death. Recently, Marcus had fallen seriously ill, and physicians diagnosed him with a shameful disease. Only then did he truly see Pearl's years of submission for what they were, calculated revenge. Perhaps from the moment he had kicked her pregnant belly, she had begun plotting her retaliation. The day he discovered the truth, he went to confront Pearl, only to find her in bed with another man. She rose from the bed, casually draping herself in a thin robe as she approached him, her eyes filled with contempt. Enraged, he fought with the other man but lacked the strength to win, ending up beaten severely. His children, Timothy and Hope, ran to the other man, both calling him father. Only then did Marcus realize the children he had raised for years belonged to another man. He collapsed and wept bitterly. At that moment, news arrived that his mother, with whom he hadn't spoken in years, had finally passed away. In a single night, he lost his mother and his children. He had already lost his beloved long ago. Now he was truly alone in the world. When Miriam recounted this, her face showed complete satisfaction. He got his comeuppance and became destitute. I shook my head with a sly smile. No, he still has something else. Miriam looked puzzled. What? His shameful disease. Miriam threw back her head and laughed. I have 2 secrets. Would you like to hear them? Miriam leaned closer. When I left, I gave the dowager lady slow-acting poison. The poison I administered years ago has finally borne fruit. And the other? I placed a sterilization incense in Marcus's room long ago. He's been sterile for years.